welcome to Focus on B, the video series where I spent about 20 or so minutes playing and talking about a game that I've got some thoughts on, and I have once again forgotten to do this. You know, I specifically downloaded the, Don't Tell EA, I guess, because they own Codemasters, right? But whatever. I downloaded the EU version specifically because, one, its timing is correct, and two, because it has the British voices, which I prefer. Anyway, does this game need any introduction? This is Colin McRae Rally 2.0, also known as Rally Racing Nostalgia Incarnate. Everyone played this. I imagine, objectively speaking, I'm sure that more people played this on PS1 than they did on PC, because, well, the PS1 was very successful, and PCs at the time were a little bit more fickle when it came to gaming. It was doable, absolutely. It was popular, but I wouldn't be surprised if on pure average, more people played this version than the PC version, which is a complete pain in the ass to get working on modern Windows, and it's possible. I just can't be fucked to do it. You can actually really easily get the demo version working, but who wants to watch me play the fucking demo version, right? Although it does let you showcase like the proper graphics settings and everything. Actually, no, certain graphics settings are actually turned down in that version, which actually wasn't super uncommon for game demos of the time. Primarily to keep file sizes low so people can download them more easily. But regardless, this is the PS1 version, and I want to talk about primarily two things while playing this game, other than just how fucking smooth and beautiful and amazing it is. And after playing some V-Rally earlier, I still have to admit this is the slightly better, a more polished feeling, better looking game. Even though V-Rally 2 on PS1 is absolutely excellent, and V-Rally 2 on Dreamcast is better than this, admittedly. But this is still very good for its own standards, and really is a showcase of what 6 years of development knowledge can do for a system, because this was released in the year 2000. PlayStation 1 came out very late 1994, right? So this was like almost kind of, if you think about it, 7 years if you count 94 itself, but not quite. I guess, yeah, 6 years in the making. And well, not really, because, well, Codemasters had been around before that. But regardless, you know what I want to talk about, actually, which is relevant to the way the game looks right now. It's how fickle nostalgia can be. Because you would think, just playing this right now, being emulated at a much higher resolution, with perspective-correct textures, so it removes the wobbling, and with no divering. In fact, let me just break your immersion a little bit by going into the settings, and real quick, where is it? There it is, texture filtering. And now it's literally as close to the PC version as you can get, and yet I don't feel it. I don't feel that feeling, right, you get when you know that you're playing that exact thing that you experienced in your childhood. Because I played the PC version, of course. I didn't have a PlayStation, and I'm sure I probably could have emulated the PS1 version even back then, but I didn't know how. For some reason, for the longest time, PS1 emulation eluded me. Like N64, no problem. Even fucking Saturn. The PS1, it was like, I guess I didn't know what a BIOS file was. I don't fucking know. But basically, it's not a problem anymore. But still, look at this. Even when filtering the textures, even upscaling, it's almost there. I can almost get that feeling back, but it's not quite happening. Now, part of that might be because I played a lot more of the arcade mode, which I might showcase later in this video. We do have 20 or so minutes, so I might actually leave the rally mode for a bit and play some of the arcade mode, which will be a nice little comparison to V-Rally. Basically, I like to do, sometimes I like to do Focus on B in like pairs, like accompanying videos, if that makes sense. Like in this case, where I go from V-Rally to Colin McRae. Very similar. Last week, it was fucking Daikatana and Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012. Nothing in common, right? But here, it's like, oh, I think these two are companion pieces. They make sense together. So regardless of that, this is just an outright fantastic game, but just playing it this way, it doesn't get quite to that core of hitting the nostalgia bone. You know what I mean? Although it doesn't necessarily mean you need to have it, because there are some games that I will 100% admit that I only enjoy on a nostalgic level, as in my brain receives them as, wow, this reminds me of my childhood. But I can't actually say that I'm enjoying the game on its own merits. Honestly, games like that would include Counter-Strike 1.6. I just find it really boring. Also, Midtown Madness. yeah, that game was really cool, and it was a huge. I almost want to say it was an innovator in the genre, but I can't really play it today, honestly. No, I can play it easily with the 1560 patch or 1506. I forgot. Again, fan-made patch makes the game run well on modern Windows, right? Although you don't necessarily need it, because I actually found this one download on the Internet Archive, which included this this goodies folder with this file called midpatch.exe. Now, in modern slang, that probably just sounds like a not very good patch. No, it's Midtown Madness patch, and basically it just makes the game run on modern Windows. It still has some issues, but it makes it work. Although, still, I imagine that 150 whatever launcher, that one's still the best way. I've used it too, and it was much more trouble-free. So I still recommend you do that instead. But regardless of that, oh my fucking god, oh my, smashed into the bitmap tree. Bitmaps actually aren't what we all think they are, to be honest. It's not just a low-resolution image. It has a very specific meaning. But regardless, enough of me being a fucking nerd. Yeah, that's one thing that I want to talk about, and something else is the paradox of the concept of a niche genre. Because I've often heard racing games and driving games in general described as niche. And that always kind of puzzled me, because my idea of niche is something that is very difficult to understand, not universal. Games that have a very, very, very specific audience. I was thinking, what's so specific about a driving game? Everyone knows what a car is. You don't even have to drive to understand cars. You just go vroom vroom. You hold the fucking button down, go left and right. Then I realized, no, actually, when people say a racing game is niche, what they really mean is when it comes to like hardcore racing games, like R Factor, iRacing, Assetto Corsa, even to an extent, I guess, Project Cars. Now that shit is niche. Like, if you're playing those games, you've probably got like a fucking big ass racing setup in your room, right? And it rotates around and stuff, and in general, they're the kind of games that you get the most out of when you take them more and more seriously. But I still think it's kind of an unfair description of the genre, because I don't give a shit about that. I do own a racing wheel, but I gave it to my dad so he can play freaking Euro Truck. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care that much about that kind of stuff. I just really enjoy driving cars around, you know? I don't necessarily concern myself with, one, how realistic it is, how demanding it is, you know? It's like, one of my fucking biggest guilty pleasures of a racing game would probably have to be Test Drive 6. In fact, the Test Drive games as a whole on the PS1. Those games are absolutely hilarious, and I adore them, and they're just so cheese. They're so dated feeling. Like, a lot of games from this time, specifically I think driving games, technically, even though they haven't aged super well, I think stylistically they've held up really well. Like Need for Speed Free, for example, feels like the future. Need for Speed High Stakes also, Porsche Unleashed, even 2. Honestly, 2, holy shit, the soundtrack on that game, right? Even the first one doesn't feel super dated. But then you got shit like Test Drive, or Test Drive like 4, 5, and 6 specifically. Wow, the cheese. They do have some good stylistic choices, but very few. I mean, for fuck's sake, who thought it was a good idea to put Fear Factory's cover of Cars by Gary Newman? For one, I can't stand the way it sounds to begin with. And neither could the band, actually. I've watched a couple interviews with them, and, like, yeah, wow. They were, while they were glad that it helped them out, you know, in terms of popularity, they almost kind of feel that it was way too corny, right? And it is, because it's like, if you listen to Fear Factory, it's like, they're basically what I thought Nine Inch Nails would sound like before I realized what Nine Inch Nails actually sound like. Like, they're heavy, but you can actually, they're basically, it's like industrial metal, but not quite as corny, because it's not industrial metal, it's just straight up, well, they're not gent, necessarily. I don't know what you call them, but they're really heavy. Like, they're fucking heavy, drop tune, and cool, you know? And that song, that cover is like, I don't know, man. But still, that kind of stuff. Although there is some cool drum and bass on there. There's also this absolutely fucking garbage pop-punk song on there, on Test Drive 6. Anyway, regardless of that, what was I talking about? Yeah, just the paradox of the niche genre, and the fact that, like, it's a simple concept to understand, but I think the problem is that it's so simple that it turns back around to requiring complexity to really get the most out of it, enjoying it. And people kind of get bored with it. I know that's a very common thing with racing games. It's like it gets boring to play, or it gets boring to watch. And I'll be the first to admit, I don't watch a lot of Let's Plays of racing games. Very few people could keep me entertained. Back when I used to, yeah, Black Panther, Slap Train, Air 12, Fail Race, I guess, classics, right? Well, some of them started a little later than others, but still, like, those kind of, yeah, Tomcat as well. But you need a very strong, entertaining presence in order to make this kind of thing last. Like, Kuru is always pretty good at it, Dustin, Eden, the chat helps out with that kind of stuff as well. It's kind of weird how, like, a lot of more recent, like, YouTube / streamer guys, they basically just use the stream, the nature of a stream, right, with the chat and stuff, as like a crutch to make themselves more entertaining. I kind of get it, especially when you're doing racing games, like, because racing games, they can have so little going on, right? Like, right now, if it weren't for me having these already pre-planned points for me to talk about, almost like it were a fucking vivid noise or something, I would be completely drawing a blank. Like, I could never Let's Play a game like this. It's just like, how do you I mean, you can, and I'm sure there's plenty of Let's Plays that exist with and without commentary. There's plenty of people who've done that. It's just that, wow, imagine actually watching that for so long, right? And there is definitely a certain quality, a certain value to watching things you're not necessarily interested in, either just as background noise or trying to get a peek into that thing to maybe develop an interest. For example, I had this one phase where I tried really hard to get into Age of Wonders, and it didn't really work gameplay wise. I just couldn't get into the game, but instead I watched this really great YouTuber, really underrated content creator called Mauve Butterfly, and he has done like a complete playthrough of almost all of the Age of Wonders games, including the most recent one, 4. I still have absolutely no idea what happens in those games, but I feel like I have a slightly better understanding, I think. Let's actually use a different car. Maybe this will hit me in the nostalgia, Think about it. Maybe this will, because I played a fuck ton of this mode right here, the arcade mode. I haven't unlocked much because I haven't played the championship, but we can just make do with this, right? I played a ton of the arcade mode in Colin McRae Rally 2.0. Not sure why. Maybe because it was like the first thing that showed up. And when you're a kid and you get a PC game, what do? You mash the fucking enter key. And I don't know if that's like a universal thing or if it's just kind of a Slavic thing. Because I remember watching Bodil 40's playthrough of Sonic Forces, which is a console game, right? I mean, it's also on PC. But like the first thing he fucking did when he beat the game was he started mashing enter. And I was thinking, like, wow, that's such a Slavic-ass thing to do, to just mash enter, to skip anything that isn't the gameplay. Because it's true. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't even know that half the fucking games I played had any story at all, because I would just mash. Just get through as much shit as possible until you get to the game. Anyway, this is the arcade mode. As you can see, the models definitely take a bit of a hit in quality, but it's all in the name of performance, because Codemasters know what they're doing. They're like, yeah, we know that we're working with something with 2 kilobytes of RAM. Let's try and make it run well. And as you can see, it's running very well, actually. Well, it's only running at like 25 FPS because it's the EU version, but that's how it's supposed to run. But it's actually really smooth, though. Also, this music reminds me of Need for Speed High Stakes. But funnily enough, though, this still really isn't hitting the nostalgia bone, and I think it's just because of the different visuals. Although in some ways, I actually kind of prefer the lighting of this version. I swear to God, it's a little brighter. I like the way the cars respond to light. Look at the reflections. They're not real reflections, I don't think. There's no way they would be real. It's a PS1 game, but they're really well conceived, like as an illusion. Overall, I mean, I do feel that this mode was tacked on. It definitely felt like maybe Codemasters they felt a little bit threatened by V-Rally. Just a tiny bit. Because V-Rally had its own thing going on with the fact that it had multiple opponents, but it was much more traditional racing game style rather than something like Top Gear Rally. Although it also had, starting with the N64 game, it also had the traditional rally mode. So I guess they felt like they were in competition, because for all intents and purposes, I guess they were. I mean, especially because V-Rally was multi-platform, and at this point, Colin McRae was only on PS1 and PC. V-Rally, again, was on PS1, PC, N64, and Dreamcast. I mean, what's fucking left? A Saturn release? No. Although, you know what? Seeing a Sega Rally exists, I wouldn't be surprised if it is possible, technically, to get, like, a game like V-Rally to run on the Saturn. There's probably some crazy homebrew who will figure that out. Also, I keep forgetting this game has actual music for the races, even though I literally used part of this game's soundtrack for my Need for Speed Shift video I did almost 2 years ago. Jesus Christ. But regardless of that, though, this just isn't the best way to shine a light on this game. I'll do one more race just to sort of, you know, re-explore it, I guess. But I definitely think that the highlight of this game is 100% the traditional rally mode. Although this is still fun enough, I think the handling is a little bit different. I'm not 100% sure, but let's go ahead and do that, and then we can call it a day, all right? Yeah, I know I want to save my data. Jesus Christ. How you like that freaking interlacing, by the way? Because it's the only way to make it not jitter. Because otherwise it looks like shit. Come on. 50, what was it? Look, what is it running at? Oh, it's really concerning whenever I see the FPS drop like that. Anyway, let's pick a different car. Maybe this will hit the nostalgia bone. The Impreza. The Impreza. Where are we going to... Let's go to... You know what? I absolutely adore snowy rally stages. I'm not sure why, but every time I do a snowy rally stage, it just sends me into an absolute... into a stupor of positive feelings. You get what I mean? Which is interesting because I fucking hate the snow. That's one. And two, I can't really say I played these levels the most. I think it's just because of the colors. Well, the white. Just the whiteness of everything. It feels, despite the fact that you think it feels cold, it feels kind of warm in a way. I'm not sure. You know, every time I think of an image like this, a rally game in the snow, I keep thinking of Colin McRae Rally 4. No, not 4. 2005 for some reason, which is the 5th game. Even though my memory of the game's menus is very different, I remember having these like really abstract red menus. That's not the case, actually. It has these very brown menus. A full year before Need for Speed Most Wanted created the patent for brown, right, and yellow in racing games. So it kind of surprised me that that's the case. Like, I swear to God, I see that in my head, in my mind's eye. I see it every time I imagine something like this, but no. There is not a single Colin McRae game with that particular interface. Am I thinking of Dirt? Well, no. I do remember playing Dirt a very long time ago when I was a kid, and before rediscovering it and playing the fuck out of it more recently. But when I was a kid, I remember playing, I swear to God, it was like the Dirt demo or something. Because I remember specific tracks and event types that were not exclusive to the demo, but they were in the demo as well. And I remember having access to certain tracks that you typically wouldn't have super early on, meaning that I probably played that version. I'm surprised my PC was even able to take it. I mean, that game is kind of fucking chunky. You can really tell it was Codemaster's first time using that particular engine, because even on my current PC, when I did my Vivid Noise a while ago on Colin McRae Dirt 1, I had to turn the settings down. You can probably tell. Because even though my GPU was nowhere near 100, neither was my CPU, they were both, like, the game itself was fucking chugging. Even though I was only recording at 30 frames, but it was dropping below that. It was insane. Like, what the fuck? You're from 2007, but it's actually interesting, actually, how many games from that exact point in time, that sort of Vista era, like the late 2000s, have really bad performance. I mean, do I need any more examples than Crysis? Also, GTA 4. Also, Saints Row 2. And then Assassin's Creed was like, okay, I'm about 7 years too late, but can your PC run Assassin's Creed Unity? You know what's funny? I genuinely used to think that Assassin's Creed Unity was just an Assassin's Creed game built in Unity, the engine. And that would not have been impossible. Unity was first released in like 2005. It's incredible how, I wouldn't say old, but not as recent it is. You know what I mean? I always figured it was like super new. No, it's actually now 20 years old. Godot is like only just now turning 11 years old. Fucking Unreal is 27, I think. Hold on, let me do some math in my head. Yeah, 27 now. Jesus Christ. And don't even get me fucking started on fucking id Tech. Well, no one really uses the original. Actually, no, if you think about it, a lot of people still use id Tech because Doom mods. But regardless, that was Colin McRae Rally 2.0. An incredible game. I don't need to say anything about it. It's just fucking beautiful. One of the best driving games on the PS1 easily, and still an incredibly good driving game. I do think it's overall been superseded by some of its future entries, which is typically what you would expect, but it still holds up ridiculously well, and put up a really good fight against V-Rally. Both are solid. I mean, honestly, go just play both games. It doesn't really matter that much, but they're really good. And regardless, this has been Focus on B, the video series where I spend about 20 or so minutes playing and talking about some games, or maybe just one game in this case, because sometimes I do multiple games. But in this case, it was just one. That was Colin McRae Rally 2.0, year 2000, PS1.